Hello everybody, Isabella from Prior Attire here again, and we are doing another making video today. I'm going to Buxton Dickensian Ball this weekend, and I was planning to use one of my crinoline dresses that I've made for the Victorian Dressmaker 3 about 2 years ago. I've never worn it. It was modelled by someone else, a good friend of mine. So I thought I'll see if I can squeeze into it, and I can just about, with wide lacing at the back. But I realised I sold my crinoline cage in the meantime. Somehow, not sure how that happened, but I did. I've got elliptical ones, but I don't have a round one. So that's what I'm going to do today. I've got not a lot of time to do it. But contrary to what many people think, it is not as arduous a task. It just differs a little bit from regular dressmaking because it deals with metal usually, or whalebone. But it's once you sort of go past the initial sort of uncertainty or fear of dealing all of those scary tools, it's actually quite fun, but hard on the fingers. Crinoline cages, just a little bit of history of them. There is already a pattern and then step-by-step instructions in my first book in the Victorian Dressmaker. But to be honest, you don't actually need a pattern per se. Instructions are very important and very welcome, so that's needed. But you don't need a pattern, and many people at the time did not have a pattern. Yes, the idea was patented in the late 50s, before women were relying on numerous heavily starched petticoats, corded petticoats, horsehair petticoats, to maintain a nice sort of oblong shape or sort of round shape. But the introduction of the crinoline cage, which was not really surprising considering that we do have sort of wired and stiffened supports, both in Georgian, you have big panniers with whalebone, you have farthingales, which are basically similar as crinolines in the 16th century. So it was just a question of time when someone said, hold on, we don't need all those petticoats. It's heavy, it's cumbersome, it's a lot of work ironing them and starching them. Let's have something that will support the shape without the weight. And boom, Thompson's crinoline, I think, was the first. I'll check on that. It became very, very fashionable with no delay, really. It was taken, fashion was taken by storm. And contrary to lots of myths, it did not really cause people to drown or catch fire and stuff like that. There were some incidents like nowadays, but they were very, very rare. And usually not to do with crinoline per se, but with people being negligent of basic common sense, which is Darwin. Right. The shapes, the sizes, the ways of making the crinolines were diverse. Those who could afford professional made, they did. And that's where the sort of official patented styles went from. There were lots of patented styles that actually were not made into anything, as far as we know, because we don't have any remaining data. We just have an application for a patent in the archives, and that's about it. So there were lots of different bits. And obviously people who couldn't afford professionally made crinoline cages were experimenting, and they were using anything they had. So different kind of fabrics, different kind of wiring. There would straight wire, there would be a whalebone, so there will be canes. Anything that would work was being basically used, just like nowadays, really. What I'm going to concentrate today is a cage made half in fabric, half in wire, and that's again quite a popular solution. Many cages were made just as a cage, just with wire, usually covered by fabric or encased in casings. Some would have a very narrow bit at the bottom. That was useful because that would stop you putting your leg through the gaps in the hoops, so hence that it sort of started. But it actually provides a little bit more support and a little bit more support for the skirt, and that fabric bit could be either very small or very large, or you could have actually whole crinoline covered in fabric completely, just like farthingales in the 16th century. So it's really up to you. Sometimes you could have a little flounce at the bottom of the crinoline. Sometimes the fabric component would be folded double, which is useful if you have a lot of fabric and you don't have any casings for boning, because then you just sew the casings around between the two layers of fabrics. That's it. You don't need anything else. It does weigh a little bit more, which may or may not be an issue. Or you can use plain herringbone tapes on a one layer of fabric. That's what we're going to do today as well. Now this fabric, I have some cotton twill here that I've managed to find, and that bottom part could be shaped so that it follows the sort of triangular profile. So you could sort of shape it petering out slightly, or it could not be shaped at all, just a plain rectangle, which what I have today. Because you can see on many extant examples that the bottom part of the fabric is smooth and straight, whereas the top one is all crinkled and gathered. And that's what happens when you have just a standard rectangle or sort of loop. And you regulate the width of the crinoline by the wires inside or bones inside. And that's what, obviously, as the crinoline goes slower and smaller and smaller, they gather more fabric around them, which actually is a nice effect. And the sort of gathering is also supporting the skirt, so that's a little bit more volume that hides the shape of the hoops. So that's something I'm going to do today, mostly because I'm lazy, I suppose. It just basically means you have a little bit more fiddling of the boning, but you don't have to worry much about mats and cutting out bits of fabric to suit. If you're into mats, go for it, play around, do a mock-up. I don't have time, but also I'm not very good at maths, so I'd rather do something freehanding. So that's my strip. It's going to be that long, so possibly from ankle to knee or just above, and it's just a plain rectangle. The size, again, completely up to you. Some are very small, especially later on, so you can think quite difficult to walk in one. Some are quite large, especially later on when you have the elliptical crinolines. For walking ones or round ones, I think most common sizes were between 2.5 circumference to about 3.5 circumference. Mine is here 3.5 meters, a little bit less, 340 I think I've measured up. So 340, it's just one long strip of fabric, pieced a little bit because I didn't have enough fabric for that. So it's pieced at one end, there you go, here. And that is going to be my base. If you are I just used stash fabric. If you are thinking of making your own of similar shape, I would suggest get 1.5 meters of fabric and just piece it all out. You will need boning, that's needless to say, and you can have steel boning like these. This is quite a narrow steel boning, and the one I possibly will be using, which is this one, that's my favourite ones. This one here is great, but it's very, very stiff. This one's a little bit more flexible and it flows a little bit better as far as sitting is concerned, but both are acceptable. For the wires showing above the fabric bit, I have something great, and you can actually make a whole crinoline out of that. That's a fabric or tape covered wire, crinoline wire from Farthingales in Canada, and these are fantastic. You can also use plain wire and just cover it in a cotton tape yourself. Lots of work on that, but looks very nice, and it's there's evidence for that as well. For these guys, for the sort of plain tape, you will need casing. So either use double tape and encase the wire inside for the hoop, or use a little bit less work, casing already prepared. Let me see if I can grab a bit to show you. So these can be, I think this one is from Vina Cava Design from UK. If I can put it in. So basically that really cuts your work by quite a lot. So that's one option. With this one, obviously, you don't need any casings at all. You will be stitching these ones directly onto the vertical tape or encasing them, and we'll go back to that in a second. So we have our boning. You will need ideally connectors. So this is for my white wire. So you put 2 ends in it and you crimp it quite strongly. Usually works. I usually put the tape over that. I have smaller connectors also from Farthingales, so these will be ideal for my fabric covered hoops. You need something to cut your wires, and good wire cutters are invaluable, and some pliers or whatever these are, just to crimp it up. Possibly not the best ones because they're not wide enough, so I might need to get some from my husband's secret stash. And then I usually forget to put it back, and there's a problem when he needs one. He knows where to look for them now. So that's my stuff for today. I've got some tapes for vertical bits. I'll go that later. One look at colours. People who thought that all the other garments in the Victorian era were white have a second thing coming. Crinolines, crinoline cages were mostly, well, whatever they could be. The ones that we have preserved are either natural colours or whitish. Lots of red, surprisingly. Maybe not surprisingly, so we have red ones. We have purple ones. We have blue ones. We have brown ones. So it's really, I suppose, whatever people had available and what they fancied. Some are silk, most are cotton. Some are wool, I think, as well. What I have is cotton, and it's a sort of forest green. And I thought if I have enough of these, that will actually make quite a strong accent. It doesn't really matter because it's covered in these 2 other petticoats, so you might as well have a nice contrasting colour if you want to. So we are going to start with the big loop. I'm going to close the loop first. So let's put it inside out. Don't worry about trimming or hemming any edges. It's all going to be enclosed. So I'm going to close the whole loop. That's my whole circumference. It's actually quite a lot. I might rethink my size in a second. I think my favourite jumper is showing signs of wear. Might need elbow patches. And the first thing I do after that is going to be, maybe even before that, draw the lines to put my casings. How many casings? Up to you. Definitely one at the bottom, one at the top, and how many in between as you want. If you have wider boning, make 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you have narrower one, possibly more. But again, the variety in the extent and in the patterns is quite astonishing. So just work with whatever works for you. Usually the smaller the distance between the hoop, the easier distribution of the skirt. But again, you have petticoats to do that. So really decide for yourself. And again, you say you don't need a pattern. And although it's nice to have the casing being in all equal distances, it's not a requirement either. If one is, half an inch off, it still works. Duh. So don't worry much about this one. Right, so I'm going to maybe first do my casing. Let's decide on it. I think I'll be using the grey one. The first 2 are going to be mounted actually in the right side. I'll show you it. And then folded inside, hence creating a channel. So I do that for the bottom and for the top. So I don't need to make lines for that. I need the lines for the in-between bits. Let's see how many channels can we have visually? We have 1 and 2. That's 20 inches wide. Every 5 inch, I suppose, seems fine. Maybe every 3. I need some sort of stuff. Let's put all of that aside for the time being. What connectors and not. Sort of folded my fabric because it's easier to mark on a smaller bit. It's all equal, hopefully. That's right. And if you have a mat with numbers like these, it's very easy to do so because you can see the numbers on both sides and you don't need to do any other measurements, just decide on your channels. So let's position it exactly. Let's have at least 1 in the middle, I think, 10 inches. We have 1 here, 2 in between. Now that's the mask coming over, not very good. This one here, 3 and 7, 7 and 3. I told you about the marks. Let's go. Half is 5. Let's go 2.5. It'll be quite a lot. I'm not that of it. Okay, 7. 3 more, 4, and the bottom one, and the same here. Let's have basically 3 inches in between them. 13, and 16. And the sides, so it's quite a lot of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I can live with 7. Let's make 7 bits. And you basically do the same for the rest of the fabric. Mark your channels. I'm going to stop here for a second. 4. And do the boring bit without boring you at the same time. And 10. So I'll see you once I've got them all stitched up. Well, my big loop is now sewn. And I've cut it up a little bit less, so it's now 3 meters instead of 3/4. That was quite a big cage, I don't really need that big. I have a bigger ones already, so it just has a little add-on to my usual length. I'm using the bottom selvage, and I'm going to apply this channel first. Now, as you go, at the end, it will overlap here. And it will be left open because you do need to be able to slide your hoop into it. I usually keep a little bit of that seam open as well. It just makes it so much easier to do it, to insert the hoops later on and to use the cramping. So let's get on with it. I'm going to do a little bit on speed thingy and see how it goes. It's quite a boring process, I must say. our boned foundation, and as you can see, the fabric is getting crinkly toward the top, so it lies smoothly. Oops, there's some dirt here. Lies smoothly at the very end, and then just crinkles more as the fabric is gathered and bunched alongside the smaller hoops. So once they're all done, all you need to do is just distribute the crinkles as much as you can, so it's more or less equal everywhere else. The rest will be done once you have your vertical support, and that's a job for tomorrow morning because it's getting a bit late. It's 5 o'clock. So, and in the morning we have much better light because at the moment I can't really film just with the little camera light. So yeah, that is done. We just need the supports to attach. Possibly I will just pin them first on the dummy, and then we will experiment with the upper part of it, and that would be all. Right, the base is sewn. I decided to use a contrasting thread because it looks nice. You can use matching if you want. I've run out of tape at some point, so I have 2 different colours. One is slightly thicker than the other, well, thicker, wider, but still works, and obviously no one's going to see that. And yeah, so far so good. We have 3 meters, and as you can see at the end, not every channel is finished, so that I can insert the hoops in the channels and then stitch it after. Now the tricky bit is you have to get the boning cut, and this one, contrary to the piece of fabric, needs to be more precise, because if you cut all the hoops the size of the fabric, which is a rectangular, you end up with a rectangular thing, you know, like a well. So your boning needs to be tapering out. The bottom one is an easy one. It says do not cut the tapes, because it can be the width or sort of the circumference of the base. I usually add 2-3 inches more so that they overlap, and obviously then it's sort of the tension is kept quite nicely, and it will not need a connector, so that's one less job to do. The others, however, need to taper out, so they need to be much more precise. Again, you can cut all of them the same size and then overlap by quite a lot, and then you can regulate them as you go and crimped where you need to be. That is absolutely fine. You are not saving up on your boning, which is maybe not a very expensive thing, but it's not the cheapest either. So that's something that will help you if you are really wondering how much to sort of take off from the length of the boning. And it's a good approach because you actually end up creating the shape as you go, the same way we will do in the upper part. I have a little bit of a cheat sheet, which is my own book. I obviously made it just to help myself. And I've made a walking crinoline cage before. It's a bigger one. This one has 3.5 meter circumference at the bottom, so a much bigger one by 0.5 meter. But more or less, looking at the boning on base, and their boning is a little bit more spaced, so the gradient is a little bit steeper. Are sort of using the information here, and it has some sort of information exactly for if you want to use that. I managed to adjust the boning for my own project here, and let me just make it case. And decided that half of the support base, it's going to be about 25 centimeters difference. So most of my bones are going to be shorter by about 10 centimeters each, and we'll see how it goes. If they are a little bit too long, I can overlap, so that's not a problem, but I am saving a little bit of boning. So the most joyous task is getting all of that sorted out, and it's a bit boring and a bit irritating and takes some time because you need to undo quite a lot, whereas making sure that it doesn't unravel completely. You don't want to cut those bits, you don't want them to unravel completely. It's going to be chaos. I mean, if you like chaos, fair enough, go for it. But this is going to be quite a lot. So I need the first one, which is 3 meters, or just over, so that it overlaps. So let's have a look how much we have here. That's 1 meter, 2 meter, and 30, so a little bit more. The boning, and obviously you can use wider synthetic whalebone as well. It's quite well. It's not as sturdy, but if you use enough of it, it will work, especially the narrower widths. And this, as you can see, it's quite flexible. So let us get 3 meters. 1, 2, and we get 3. Let's say 3 and a bit for overlap. Now these ends will need to be filed either with Dremel or the grinder. I've got a grinder, so I'm going to do that now. And then all of that will need to be inserted into the hoops. I'm going to grind these ones. Give me a sec. Oh, a bit more than a sec. We've got the edges ground and filed a little bit. I usually put a bit of masking tape at the end, just so that it doesn't really catch any stray threads inside the channel. It really helps. Or you can put silicone caps on it as well. Both work. This also means the connector will sit better on it. In theory. Right, I'm just doing this one to show you. So now it is quite secure. You can also use plumber's tape, the same I'm using for corset boning. So that's our bottom hoop. It doesn't really matter which bottom hoop is here because it's all the same measurements everywhere. So let me just get to the opening and let the fun begin. So you're basically threading it through. So it's just about right. Mine overlaps by about 2 inches, which is not bad. That's why you need that opening here, because if you want to crimp it, you actually have an access to that nicely. Make sure the boning is flat all the way around. It's not twisted. It can twist on a big cage, and this one is not too bad. And then you just need to stitch it either by hand or on a machine. I can crimp it first. Let's see the crimping method. So I put in the crimp in one, slide the other one. Doesn't need crimping, to be honest. With the tape, it's already in and it's quite secure already. But not sure if this is the best option, but let's have a go. It works. There you go, all crimped and edges secured. To be honest, if you're using connectors and you are quite precise, and your edges end inside, you don't need to file them, but you never know, always easier. So I'm now going to cut the rest of the boning and insert. Let me have a look. I think my boning is twisted, which is going to be very irritating. Or maybe not. So I'm going to cut the rest of the boning and do the very same things with all the rest until the whole of the bottom is, that's good, is boned. And then we will play with the vertical supports and with the other bits. It's getting dark here, but the overlight is so harsh and so flickering that I don't think the camera will like it. Well, we'll see. The time has come to talk about the vertical supports and how to anchor these against them. So vertical supports are just tapes. Originally they could be, to be honest, wider or narrower, doesn't really matter. Wider were very popular when you had rivets going through it, because then these, especially if it was round wire, not flat, would just go through it. If you have round wire, you can use eyelets. So that's another way, and that's quite an easy way to just anchor them to go through. I don't have rivets available to me. I don't have round wire available to me. So although I have eyelets, I cannot use them. So the best thing is you can either use your support and create individual sort of pockets on each and stitch it to each of them, like this. Or a little bit less hand stitching is have your support in two. That loop at the top is going to be for your waistband. I'm going to be using a spare bit of, a bit wider than necessary, but will work. So that is going to be threaded through, that's my waistband. So this loop needs to be wide enough to keep that waistband moving, but not too loosely. So that would be my first stitch. And then I did the same, making stitches here and there, enough to thread these guys through. So that will involve quite a lot of quite a lot of stitching on the machine, but still much easier to do so. So that's one of the reasons. You can also, if you want to, just directly stitch your fabric covered wire onto this one. That's actually very, very period solution as well. It is quite tough on your fingers and it takes a bit more time, but it's fine. So you choose whatever you want to do. The amount of supports, I think 5 was the fewest I've seen. 7 or 9 are the standard. You want to have supports going not in front of you, but a little bit at the side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Depends on what you want to do. I'll see how much of that tape I have. I possibly will end up with 7 or 8 supports. So you cut these supports first, you mark your stitching lines, and then you before you mark, decide how many of these you want there and at what distances. They can be regular or irregular. Some crinolines have them much tighter at the bottom and a little bit sparsely at the top. And it's up to you. It can be 5, it can be 10, it can be 12 if you really want to. So play with it. I usually, and I think that's something I'll do today as well, once I have these stitched up, I stitch one at the middle, pin it to the cage and see how many I need. But I will think that's about 20 inches long. I would probably need 1 every 2 inch. So that's my theoretical bit. There'll be quite a lot of stitching, but that's what the machines are for. Funnily enough, that's when the sewing machine started being more and more popular in the late 60s, obviously because it's just been patented. So all of that, lots of stitching on the support bag, on the sort of base foundation. That was a lot of stitching, and it took me about an hour on the machine. It would take me much longer by hand. Even though it's not precision stitching, it still takes some time. So yes, my next job is to cut my supports, mark the stitching lines for the boning and for the waistband, and stitch them up. And once they're stitched on, how long? I think I should have enough for 8. Once they're stitched on, we can attach them to the foundation and put them on a dummy and start threading these guys in, because that's where we'll be deciding the shape of the top of the cage. Well, good morning. Better light now, obviously. So we carry on. Just before we leave for Buxton, I've made the vertical supports. They just need threads being cut on both sides, so that's where the boning is going to go through. So I'm going to be threading them onto my waist tape, and next step is going to be pinning them in more or less equal distances to the bottom part and adjusting the length, because theoretically that's the length I want it. In practice, once it's in place, I'm going to see how long it is. If I need to shorten it, I will shorten it. Less work, less boning. So that's my next job for today, and hopefully that's the last stretch. Right, our cage is on. I had to shorten the supports a little bit, so there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hoops coming on. And one thing is also evident, that's the top hoop is a little bit too big, so I'm going to shorten it up so that the shape sort of lies a little bit better. Not a big problem, because these ones here will add more to the shape. They will actually shorten a bit more, but that's just about right shape and right height for my figure. Now, these obviously slide in, which is quite useful if you have different sizes. If the cage is for you, you just stitch these onto the tape as you need, and then they will not slide, and it will be much easier to sort it out. And that's, I think, also something I will do. But so far, it just looks like a big barrel, to be honest. It will look better once the other boning is on. It just adds a little more shape. So I'm going to adjust the top hoop and redistribute a little bit of the gathering, because you can see the gather here is a bit too much and not enough here. So I will redistribute that. Again, it's aesthetics purely. And then attach these. At the moment they're just pinned. Yeah, pins here. Attach these and start weaving through the other boning. So I'll see you then. Right, I have shortened the top hoop and it's better, and I've attached the sort of stitched on the vertical supports, and I'm starting to crack on the other ones. The first thing to do, the first 2 or 3 actually, even 4 in this case, up to here, the front's going to be open, so they will just finish in those bits. So what I'm doing right now basically is just stitching the first channel here shut, so that I can thread it over and it will stop and I can attach it there. I like to start from the top, because that already gives me a little bit of a shape and basically 2 points of reference how I want the rest of the crinoline to go. So I've got my nice wire. Let us have a look how much I need to undo. And you see why it says do not cut ties. Just do not cut ties. It's chaos. I might put one halfway through for easier control, theoretically. And just tie them a bit more as they go smaller. Right, let's get freed a little bit more. So this, it is not really well. Where is my tape? I'm just using my tape. I've run out of my plumber's tape, so this will have to do. Just to make sure the ends are not too stiff. And obviously you can just file them as well. So I'm just going to start threading them, which is not an easy thing because these are under tension and they're as small as possible so that the hoops don't move too much. But just picking up. So that's a little bit boring for you to watch, I suppose. But you can see how important it is that these ones move around. You can create as much shape in between as you want, and you can set it later on. So if I'm making stuff for the shop, I would probably leave them mobile so people can decide how much shape they want. If I'm doing for myself, I will end up, possibly not today because we need to leave in a couple of hours, of stitching every connection here to the tape just to make sure it's all doing all right. Right, we are halfway through. I'm still there, I'm just threading. I will do a proper time lapse of it all when I'm doing the rest of it because it's just too boring to watch otherwise. Right, 2 more, 3 more. So yeah, I should have maybe gone for 7 supports and not 9, but I was feeling ambitious. I really do like the wire. And just 2 more. So this one here is closed at the end. So that's my anchor. I'm just going to go back. And to make it super secure, I'm just going to stitch and stitch through the wire as well, through the covering of the wire. So it is safely secured in the casing. On both sides. So that's my first wire secure. And now what I need to do is to decide how long do I want it, how much shape do I want on my hips, and I want some shape. So let's put a little bit more here. I think that's almost about right. So I'm going to cut it. Probably too minimize the disheveling of the weave. So I think I'll cut it here. And this can go inside. Final adjustment. You can see how you can manipulate so that you get a little bit more booty here, for example. Well, let's have it. I think it's a little bit too long. I'm going to cut it shorter. Just a little bit. That's better. So now I'm just going to stitch the channel shaft and stitch the casing to the tape. And this will be repeated for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. And then the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and the other 4 will just go all the way around, and I'll be using connectors. We'll get a little bit more detail on the connector use once I'm actually using it. This is not very pretty, but what I have to do, I just wanted to, ouch, damn it, stitch through my finger. But unless you bleed in your project, it's not even valid, isn't it? Right. So the first hook is on. And I need to get on with the rest of it. So I will put time-lapse. Well, the top ones are in, as you can see. Usually people ask, why do we leave that bit here open in front of the belly? But that's, I mean, you don't need to, but you can. I find it just easier to sit without all the skirt bunching in front and riding up too much. It also gives you a little bit better access, a little bit. So that's, I suppose, the reason. So now I'm going to be sitting and threading all the other wires here. That should be just about right. They don't need stitching. They will be connected with a connector, funnily enough. So basically you put both bits of wire inside and crimp in the middle. And bob's your uncle, apparently, so I'm going to try that. Again, I will do it as a time lapse because it's just far too boring to watch. I've got lots of little threads to cut as well, but that's something that I'll be doing once I'm attaching the wires for good. Not much easier to do that. So final stretch now. Well, all of it is being threaded. I usually don't close the very end until I see how the shape looks and leave a little bit of extra so I can manipulate and adjust to suit. I've already used one of the connectors here because there was a bit of a fault on the wire, so the connectors work, I'm happy to say, and they slide through. So basically at that point, what you are doing is seeing whether the shape is right for what you want it to. So I see this maybe needs a little bit more here. So you just adjust as you go. I will also hand stitch those little bits here better because at the moment they're just pulling the boning down. It's going to be like that. This one is not really necessary, but I thought I've made a channel, I'll better use it. So at the moment, that is looking quite all right. It's a little bit too much, possibly a little bit too long, but that's easy to remedy. And the connectors are really easy to use once I get them up from each other. What has happened here? Okay. So this is my lower bit. I'll have a look if I can get it closer. Not sure if I can. How bizarre. I think if it's on this setting, it doesn't do much closer, so I'll be able to do it. Maybe get it on the upper one. Right, I am still going to put a little bit of tape just to prevent fraying, because even though the edges, even if sharp, doesn't really matter with the connectors. So that should be just about right. You slide the connector, and I'd like to slide it with the opening at the back in, as far as it goes, where it goes to more or less half. And you repeat the same for the other bit. And it's on, it's quite, so I can have a look. Before I crimp it, I'm just going to have a look at the shape. And that's what I want, but I think that's about right. Okay, and at that point I'm just going to crimp the center of the connector so that neither of these wires can go any further. I'm also going to crimp a little bit on the side, just in case they don't fall out in any way. And they're quite secure, so I'm happy with that. And I'm going to be doing the other bits, playing with my hoops, getting them more oblong, less oblong. And obviously once you have elliptical crinolines with bustles, that's where you can start creating more protrusion at the back as well. Just stitching these ones in front, so the front is all right, and then adding more boning here. That will affect the length of the tapes, so if you plan something like that, make sure you have some extra tape available and do a run-up before that, just in case. Right, I'm going to finish it up, and I think we are all gone and ready for the ball. If I can fit into the dress, well, it should be okay. Right, thank you for watching, and I will report from Buxton.